All right, everybody, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jessica Andreasen. I'm the head of volunteer and intern programs at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I will be your moderator for this session. As a reminder, there are closed captions available for this session. The link is in the chat. If you have any questions, again, just pop them into the chat so we can talk to Amber at the end of her presentation. So this is session 2B, 6 steps to planning amazing virtual volunteer opportunities with Amber Smith, who is the executive director at Activate Good. Activate Good is a nonprofit that mobilizes thousands of volunteers to improve the Triangle community. As a graduate of North Carolina State University, Amber has received numerous awards and was recognized as part of Triangle Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for her work promoting culture of service in the Triangle. In 2017, Amber was appointed a commissioner on the North Carolina Commission on Volunteerism and Community Service by Governor Cooper and continues her service on the commission today. Above all, Amber is on a mission to make sure everyone realizes their own potential to change the world. Amber, the audience is all yours.
Hello. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'm super excited to be here at this virtual conference. While I get my slides up, I would love to have you drop in the chat what organization you are representing today and where you are in North Carolina, just so we can get a sort of snapshot of everyone who's here with us in the room. So please go ahead and type that in the chat. I will start. I am from Raleigh and I'm with Activate Good, as we covered. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, hopefully you all can see this. Today we are going to talk about 6 steps to plan amazing virtual volunteer opportunities. And I'm probably thinking that at this point in the pandemic, if you haven't been doing virtual volunteering already, you probably have heard quite a bit about it. So we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about all that it entails and some strategic steps you can take to make them really, really effective, both for volunteers and for your organizations. A quick overview of how we will take on this discussion today. I'll do a quick intro, providing just a little bit more context and detail about my work with Activate Good. We'll talk a little bit about the unique challenges of virtual and remote volunteering, and then we'll get into those 6 steps to plan a meaningful virtual or remote volunteer experience. And of course, we want to leave some time for questions and answers, and we will do that at the end. That said, I want this to be a very interactive conversation. So please feel free to think of questions and you can drop them in the chat, or on some occasions there will be an opportunity for us to pause and share what we are thinking with each other, questions, feedback, etc. So when you see that little symbol you see in the lower left corner of my slide, that'll be an opportunity for us to chat a little bit. If I miss any questions in the chat or comments, I'm hoping the moderators will help me catch them and we can go back later to discuss. All right, let's jump right in. So we already heard my introduction. Thank you for that. I love this work. Volunteering and civic engagement, civic participation is, I like to think of, part of my life's mission. It's all about helping people figure out their potential to change their communities around them. And so as part of that, my work with Activate Good involves a mission of improving our community through what we call people-powered projects for good. That has historically been in person and some virtual volunteering, but a lot more virtual, of course, in the past 1 to 2 years. We do all this, of course, because we really believe that everyone has a responsibility to work towards a better world in whatever way that looks to them, using their unique skills and talents and availability. And we hope that one day we'll be able to live in a world in which all people are realizing and acting on their unique potential to change the community. Okay, so more about Activate Good. In the Triangle area, how we work is as follows. We first identify the needs and gaps in services and gaps in the community where people power, aka service and civic action, can make a meaningful impact. We do this through a network of over 570 nonprofit and community partner organizations who are on the ground. They know the needs in their specific issue areas and in their communities that they serve best. So we work in partnership with them to then mobilize volunteers of all ages, skill sets, and backgrounds to go out and fulfill those needs to make the community a better place. And another thing we've been doing over the past year is a bit more on the community education side. We feel it's important for people to understand why service is important, why they are being asked to do what we need them to do in the community, and connect the issues and the root causes and a better understanding of those issues and causes with the volunteer action that they are going to take. So that's a little bit about how we work. So I think it's important to pause and ask the question all the time, why is it important to engage volunteers at all? And especially in this particular context, why it's important to engage them virtually. So a couple of reasons, you probably have heard some of these before, but volunteers also donate. There's need to figure out how he says this, but it might even be a couple of them. I believe it's about 2/3 of volunteers they're more likely to donate to causes that they're volunteering with. So when you can engage them, you've earned their trust. They want to support your cause in more ways beyond just giving their time. So volunteers also donate. Second, and this is something we've observed over the past year, is that with the light being shown on community and social issues around the world and in our local communities, we think we're seeing what we've been calling a civic renaissance, which is that people want to help out. We've always believed people wanted to help, but now we think it's increasing. People want to help out more than ever. And it's a great time for organizations who need the support of volunteers to capitalize on this energy before that motivation fizzles out and we lose an opportunity, a critical opportunity to show people how they can get involved meaningfully. And then finally, if crafted and managed well, virtual volunteer projects can make a big impact for your organization. So that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, I want to cover a couple of definitions because when someone says virtual volunteering, they might mean a couple of different things. And we've been trying to be a little bit more specific about what we're kind of talking about when we mean virtual volunteering. When we say virtual volunteering at Activate Good, we are typically talking about tasks that can be done using technology. So computer, done on your computer at home, phone, etc. And then there's remote volunteering. This would be something where perhaps it doesn't rely on technology, but maybe it requires other materials or other types of things. You see in the picture here, this great image of a daddy-daughter duo who participated in our Family Volunteer Day last fall, which we made completely remote. They utilized supplies, brought them home, and completed a project from their living room. So that would be what we mean when we say remote. And then there's DIY or do-it-yourself volunteering. And this is still off of the site of a community host organization, but it could potentially be done solo or with great levels of social distancing. And so we've included it in this collection of definitions too. This is maybe someone running a supply drive for you or picking something up, delivering it to another location. We are including all three of these because we think that in the mind of a volunteer, they might be thinking of virtual volunteering as any one of these things or a combination of things. So they're all possibilities in our book. A little bit more, a couple of examples. Virtual volunteering. And by the way, as I'm listing these examples, please feel free to drop in the chat more examples of things that might fit each of these categories that you might think of. So virtual volunteering might include things like data entry or research or list building, writing content, translating. If you have a skilled volunteer, they could be doing graphic design or creating a video, social media outreach, providing feedback on a website or on a strategic plan. Then there's the remote volunteering. So repairing an item that they picked up, like furniture or maybe a laptop, assembling kits or packets, creating cards, writing letters, etc. And then the do-it-yourself volunteering, things like leading a supply drive, we talked about that, They could be organizing a fundraiser or a crowdfunding campaign for your organization, sharing your organization's message or needs with others. Litter pickups are another good example. A couple of examples we've undertaken in the virtual volunteer realm. We've had online skills-based consultations for our nonprofit partners. Let's say an organization really needed feedback on their marketing strategy, and we had a marketing volunteer who wanted to support them in thinking through that over a brief pro bono consult. Social media ambassadors. So we will create social media guides, and then to sort of amplify our message, we will ask people to spread the word on their own social media platforms. Very simple, takes 5 minutes. Virtual volunteer readers was a very, very popular one we did towards the beginning of the pandemic. Volunteers read their favorite books in video form, and we shared these videos with organizations serving kids and promoting literacy. And then our virtual volunteer-a-thon, which I'll share a little bit more about later. But hopefully some of these ideas are getting you thinking about some possibilities for your organization if you haven't already done something like this before. Then on the remote and DIY volunteering side, we have the kids service project kits that we did. I mentioned our Family Volunteer Day initiative last fall. Sorting clothing donations in our city in Raleigh, we have a great partner, Note in the Pocket, who allows volunteers to take clothes home to sort and then return. And then supply drives, we talked about that before. And this picture on the right here is a very exciting result of one of those supply drives. A church adopted for the diaper bank and was able to get, as you can see, like a truckload, maybe 2 of supplies. That was pretty great. The virtual volunteer-a-thon I mentioned, April's Global Volunteer Month. So this past April, we curated and helped scope a list of skills-based and some non-skills-based too, virtual volunteer projects on a menu that volunteers could choose from. And we had a great participation. This was a very exciting way to get people involved. By the end of the month, we had over 200 volunteers participate and help almost 24 causes. So these are all just a couple of ways that we've been able to engage in virtual or remote volunteering. This time I want to take a pause, and here's that engagement symbol that I warned you about. I'd love to hear from you who's already tried, or maybe you're working on one right now, some kind of virtual or remote volunteer activity. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love to hear from you. Excuse me. All right, who would like to share just something that they've done and what it was? You can put it in the chat, or you can come on camera and share it verbally. Karen says, oh, okay, that was from before. All right.
The Museum of Natural Sciences has several very large events that they host every year. And last year, 2020 was the first time that they had to move these events virtually, which was extremely challenging for that team. We're talking Bugfest, for example, typically draws about 20,000 people downtown Raleigh, huge event, and they had to do it all virtually. So I absolutely commend that team. What they pulled off was incredible. But it was a full week-long thing with a few things every day during the week. And so they had all these presentations and all these activities going on, and all of it was virtually for the very first time ever. So what they did, because we had volunteers that were begging us, what can we do? What can we do? So we ended up, their team ended up recruiting a bunch of volunteers to come be essentially our practice audience, so that our education team could have a dress rehearsal, essentially, of this really challenging platform, pulling off these events virtually. And the volunteers loved it. They had a great time. They were able to sit in on these presentations. They were able to provide feedback. They were able to help with the technical aspect of it. And they were really, really invaluable to helping to pull these events off on a brand new platform for the first time.
I love that. That's a great story. And yeah, I was just thinking about Bugfest. What in the world? How would that work? Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's see. Lindsay says, I've emailed volunteers with do-it-yourself volunteer opportunities, litter pickup along park areas, and trail monitoring. Yes, that's a great one. Lindsay, I'm curious, so have you gotten a lot of engagement? Have they done it? Have they reported back, shared photos, etc.? Just one regular volunteer. Okay, interesting. Sorry to pick on you more, but I wonder if anyone gave you feedback about those opportunities and why they would be interested or would not be interested in participating. Yes. We've heard this a lot, of course. They would prefer shorter term opportunities and group projects. And just kind of as an aside, I wonder if you all have experienced this too. We're seeing like a wave of interest and availability from volunteers. You know, Jessica, you were saying the volunteers were begging you to figure out how they could get involved. And we saw huge enthusiasm and interest. And then I think, you know, things got a little bit more uncertain with the pandemic and people's schedules got a little bit more hectic. And I just wonder if anyone else has experienced this too. You can put, you can, I think, raise your hand or put a reaction if you don't want to come off camera, just by way of answering the question. So raise your hand in the picture if you have experienced a wave or sort of like waves and fluctuations in volunteering. So, yep, I see, yep. Jessica, Linda, Lynn, Pam, Bryles, yeah. That's really interesting. I'm really curious to see how that will pan out. Okay, I'm gonna move forward into the next section here. And then we will have a little bit more opportunity to engage soon. Okay, so we talked about some examples, some of the things you've already tried. Let's talk about some of those unique challenges. And this is a little bit what I was alluding to, Lindsay, when I was asking you the question. Okay, so unique challenges of virtual and remote volunteering. Might need to get creative with ways to engage. Jessica, it sounds like your team did this really well with BugFest, so that's awesome. There might be more logistics involved. For example, training, providing clear written instructions or materials. You might need to plan to communicate more frequently. And depending on the type of volunteer opportunity, you might need to target volunteers who you think that will be very confident using technology. But the good news is, with some effective planning and just clear written instructions and descriptions, you can mitigate a lot of these challenges. All right, a little bit more time to chat. We talked about one example. Does anyone else have any challenges that you've experienced in creating or managing virtual or remote volunteer experiences so far? And I will stop sharing one more time. So once again, feel free to share in the chat, small challenges, big challenges, roadblocks, either getting started or managing them, or you can share verbally. Yes, Linda.
You're muted, Linda. You're muted.
Thank you. I also work at the Museum of Natural Sciences, and I run the kindergarten through 5th grade classes that typically happen in person. And historically, those classes have been taught and assisted by volunteers. And so during that time, those volunteers have joined in things such as BugFest and other, large scale special events. But I also was using them when I was transitioning all of my programs to virtual, and they would be our practice audience and give us feedback and whatnot. So the challenges, said all that to say with the challenge, at first, everyone was very enthusiastic and would come and be our practice audience and give feedback. And then it just kind of like fizzled out, and we lost them. However, we didn't lose them completely. We just lost them, temporarily, because we do plan on starting in-person programs back up this fall. Hopefully, we'll see. And almost all of the docents that I had before, like over a year and a half ago, plan to come back. So I was really happy about that. So I guess like what you were saying a moment ago is, we saw like a big push at the beginning, and then it kind of fizzled out, and, maybe people's lives or interests, or, some of my docents are grandparents, they're helping with their grandchildren because of, lack of school and daycares being opening and things like that. But I did see the challenge in being, okay, now how do we keep them interested virtually when they so loved being in person with the kids and the live animals that we use in our program. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and I think, Linda, that you're touching on something that I believe is in a later slide too, and that is people just miss other humans right now, and Zoom is hard. What's it called? Zoom burnout, Zoom exhaustion, something like that. So when you're talking about virtual volunteering, as in using technology or even a virtual meeting, just thinking about ways that we can amp up the social aspect of it, right? Connecting as human beings, because that's, I think, what people are really missing right now and craving. And one of the reasons I'm hopeful that once we finally get out of this situation, that we'll just have another wave of enthusiasm, because people want to get out there, they want to reconnect with their community, and they've thought long and hard about what is important in life. And some of that is service to others and service to their communities and to the world. So that was my, I guess, pep talk for you. But thank you for sharing your story. Does anyone else want to share okay, let's see. Michelle says, keeping student volunteers interested virtually. Ah, yes. Especially when the draw of volunteering at the Museum for Teens is often about the getting to be behind the scenes. Yep. Michelle, I wonder, have you ever done any like virtual tours or behind the scenes tours or anything like that?
Yeah, so we had 2 groups, and Lynn Cross is on here, and she also, she's the head of our teen program volunteer peoples at the museum. And over last year, we had a group of our junior curators, and they generally were very interested in the topics we had to present, but that program very much was, especially that program is about like being able to be behind the scenes and working with the living collections. And we did our best to collaborate with living collections and do presentations that would still help them learn, and also provide, yes, virtual tours of like the living conservatory and just other, and the behind the scenes spaces. But we did have some that just kind of dropped off after a little bit. A lot of them hung in there, but we just generally didn't feel like we were giving them what they signed on for. And so and also a lot of that Zoom fatigue that you were talking about, so just trying to figure out like, how do we, on one hand, manage expectations, but also provide more valuable ways to interact and engage with our student volunteers, rather than just, here's a presentation to learn from, but something a little bit more that maybe they can go out and be a little more hands-on, since that's the whole draw of that particular program.
Yeah, I like that. Lynn, did you have anything to add to that?
No, Michelle did a pretty good job summarizing what we did, and just the Zoom fatigue, because students were getting all of their school mostly at the time online. Adding another online meeting in the afternoon was just really challenging for some. Just physically, I got some emails that said, I have headaches and I think this would be great, but I just physically can't do more, sit in one place and listen to more things. That is optional right now. And we don't give grades. And so we recognized like we were the first thing to fall off. So yeah, it was just a tough time, I think, for them. But the few that hung with us, I think socially, we tried to mix it up a little bit and have them interact with each other and ask questions as much as possible and make it a conversation that they could join into. We even had some ethical discussions, about the use of live animals in programs and other things to really kind of spur conversations. So yeah, we tried a lot of different things, but it was a tough school year for everybody, and we certainly couldn't fault people for making us an optional piece.
Yeah, I love that, the conversation element. I think that's really important. And one example that I failed to include in our slides was we did this heat mapping campaign with possibly some of you all on this call earlier this summer, where it was more of one of those do-it-yourself opportunities, right? In some cases, some volunteers to drive around and capture data, but when a device was not available, they were challenged to use this app called I See Change and record their findings walking around their neighborhoods, perhaps with their families. Kids were able to do it. You could do it on a bicycle. And so that's an interesting way that's like away from a computer to engage them in a scientific process, also a volunteer and community data collection process where they can possibly discuss their results afterwards. So that's what that reminded me of, Lynn. Okay, thank you for sharing all this. I'm gonna move to the next slide and we will be able to chat again in a couple minutes here. Okay, so we talked about some challenges. Now let's get into these 6 steps to plan a great virtual or remote volunteer experience. Step 1 sounds like something you all might have thought through a bit already at this stage in the pandemic. But creating just a list of meaningful volunteer tasks that someone could potentially support virtually or remotely. So this is just sort of a brainstorming creative phase. A couple of examples might be, does your website have a blog? A volunteer could write an article. If you are considering a technology upgrade, someone in that wheelhouse could do some research for you, some price comparisons. If you have an event coming up, there's that graphic design again. Someone could design a logo or a flyer. If you provide supplies or materials to your clients, someone could host a supply drive and drop off materials. And then there's the social media ambassador example that we talked about before, just getting people to amplify your message in a way that takes 5 minutes and could genuinely be helpful to getting the word out. Step 2 is where we get into the planning phase, and that is where you're going to determine your process, your flow for recruiting, onboarding, and equipping these virtual or remote volunteers. So how will someone sign up? What technology mechanism or other mechanism will someone actually use to literally tell you they're interested? What information will that volunteer need right away as soon as they sign up? If it's a more complicated skills-based volunteer opportunity, they might need a little bit more detail about what you're expecting from them, timelines, deliverables, all of that up front so that they know what you're looking for before they even sign up. Will this person need some kind of special training or even a background check? And then this one is very important. Who can serve as the contact person? When we work with our community partners, we ask that they have someone in charge of responding to volunteer interest within 48 to 72 hours at max. And that is because, of course, you get these excited, enthusiastic volunteers. And if they don't hear from you, they assume that you don't want them or need them. And we don't know if that's true or not, but communication is important to clarifying next steps for them. All right, step 3, the all-important job description, or specifically volunteer opportunity description. This should include an attractive volunteer opportunity title, you should include the expected opportunity. Is it project-based, meaning maybe they could manage their own time to complete the project by a certain deadline that you established together? Is there an estimated number of hours that it will take them to complete this, and when is it due? Are specific skills needed? Will there be specific onboarding requirements? And a lot of these are things that you would want to include in an in-person volunteer opportunity description as well. But some of them, like time to more detail, for example, in a project-based situation, or lower down on the list, any special technology or supplies or equipment they will need on their own in order to support your project is going to be important. A question we get all the time: can my kids participate? What ages can participate? And then we always think it's important to include the impact project. How is it going to help your organization? This is especially important in a virtual or remote opportunity when the volunteer is going to be more removed from working with you personally and not have the same opportunities to build that human-to-human trust that they might in person. Okay, a little bit more about that attractive volunteer opportunity title. We have a formula we like to follow that we have found works pretty well for us. You don't have to use this formula, but welcome to if you find it helpful. And the formula for an attractive volunteer opportunity title is as follows: help us blank by blank in blank. So complete X concrete goal by action, what they're going to do, and then in blank location. Now, obviously with virtual or remote opportunities, location might be their house or anywhere you want, but this formula applies to broadly all opportunities. And to give a couple of examples of really great opportunity titles that we found: help us feed 200 kids, so that's that concrete goal, by raising funds, that's the action, virtually, that's the location. Another one, write articles to raise awareness. That is, you've got both the action and the concrete goal there. It's the write articles, and then to raise awareness about homelessness from your laptop location. I try to advise against very vague or non-specific opportunity titles like be a virtual volunteer, help with administrative work, etc. That doesn't really paint a clear picture to volunteers of what they might be expected to do. And I don't know, think like an internet marketer. What would be clickbait, but like not in a bad way. Okay, step 4. This is where you are starting to promote your opportunities. Whenever possible, we recommend targeting your outreach, thinking about what types of people in terms of skills or availability or types of schedules might be the best fit for the specific type of opportunity you're trying to recruit for. With skills-based, this is very cut and dry. Obviously, let's say you need an accountant to review your tax form, for example. You obviously want to target accountants, but you also might think of how high school students or college groups and how corporate employees, their types of schedules, or retirees might fit into your virtual volunteer needs as well. Okay, step 5, and I'm moving through these quickly to make sure we have time for some more discussion at the end. This is where you're getting ready to manage the actual volunteer experience. You've done all your planning, you've set it up, you've recruited some awesome volunteers who meet your needs. Now you've got to maintain it and make sure it's a good experience that's also effective for your organization. So this entails planning regular communication, checking in with them regularly, anticipating what questions they might have in advance, and if possible, write out that frequently asked questions and that correspond and provide that in advance so they can read over it and you just have to write it once. It's very efficient. Determine that point person if the volunteer has a problem or question. If it's a supply drive or something involving materials, what is a drop-off schedule where your staff will be available to receive them? Sometimes we have folks who are doing a supply drive. They excitedly take their materials to the drop-off location, and then the person at the reception desk has no idea who they are or what they're talking about. And it can be a little bit confusing for volunteers. So making sure that everyone in your organization who might be on the receiving end of those supplies is aware of what's going on. And then if you need to track the volunteer hours or outcomes and you're not sure because it's maybe project-based, you can work with the volunteer to determine what hours they spent or just put forth a fair guess. Okay, and then step 6, the final step. This is something you want to do with all volunteering, of course, and that is to celebrate and acknowledge the impact of your volunteers. You can do this in a couple different ways. Sharing the volunteer stories on your social media in your newsletter, including virtual and remote volunteers in your normal volunteer appreciation and recognition regimen. And doing this can also inspire other volunteers to think about how they might get involved virtually, because they see someone else who has successfully done it and you're honoring them for that. And then we talked about this a little bit before in our discussion, but adding the social components. People need to connect right now. So if there are opportunities for your volunteers to meet with each other, engage with each other, we were for a while holding monthly virtual town hall meetings where anyone could come, and especially our volunteers and donors could come and just chat and check in with us and let us know how they were doing. Just building community is something really helpful that we found right now. Okay, I want to hear from you again. We've talked about some ideas, we've talked about some challenges, we've talked about some steps. What are some more ideas that you might have on activities that your organization could try? Love to hear from you. If anyone else is wondering, yes, I believe the slides and at the very least, this recording will be shared. So if you didn't memorize all those steps, don't worry. Any comments, questions, sparks of inspiration, anything at all that you'd like to share at this point?
So Amber, if I could just jump in, maybe you can let everybody know about the virtual volunteer fairs that you've been holding throughout the past couple of months.
Sure. And thank you, because our next one is this Wednesday, September 1st. We've been doing virtual volunteer expos. So think of it as a volunteer fair, except it's virtual. And of course, in a virtual format, we structure things a little differently than you would at a volunteer fair. To keep the chaos minimized, we don't have people just randomly entering the whole meeting and talking to each other all the time. So it's very structured. We have a handful of organizations, community partners present their volunteer needs, and then we have breakout rooms where people in the call can join a breakout room to hear more from an organization that they are interested in. And then they can switch breakout rooms. So if they want, they can hop to different rooms to learn more about multiple organizations. Then they come back and we host a little trivia and someone wins a $20 Target gift card, which is always great fun. And afterward, we send out the list of opportunities and partners that were in the meeting to everyone who attended. That's how those have been working. They've been very well attended.
And about how many organizations do you highlight in each of the expos that you do?
Usually 5 to 6. That's about all we have time for, to give everyone a couple minutes to chat and to have the breakout rooms.
Well, I can attest, I've been on 2 of them and they are absolutely fantastic and a great way to learn about, opportunities out there.
Yeah, and or you don't have to be a volunteer hub like we are. You could be a single organization with multiple opportunities and have a similar format. Virtual volunteer expo just for the museum, come learn about all of the different ways you can get involved virtually, or when it's time, or if you have any in-person opportunities, you could showcase there too, and then have each of your points of contact and breakout rooms. You could do it similarly for a single organization as well. Linda, yes, there is information about them posted on the Activate Good website. I will put the link in the chat for you. Please note, hold on, there they are, that this Wednesdays is actually our last in the series, and then we're taking a pause to figure out what to do next. There, I've now put it in the chat for you. Okay. Well, the next section was just Q&A anyway, so if there's any question that you all have or any feedback or thoughts or ideas, we can move right into that. Any final thoughts?
I had a question about volunteer recognition. We had done a lot of that in person in the past. And so if you've completed a project with like a cohort of virtual volunteers, is there a way to, I don't know, how do you make that piece engaging and like wrap up nicely? The whole like high-fiving on the way out the door isn't really happening these days.
Yeah, and sometimes organizations have sort of an annual volunteer recognition event, and one obvious thing is you could make that virtual. We found people really like the games and the trivia, and that also adds a social component. So this less about recognition and more about connecting and having fun, but that's something too. You could offer small virtual gifts. We did a gift of Zoom backgrounds to some of our volunteers and donors at some point, and actually really liked that more than I expected. So that's great too. There's I think it's called Kudo Board. There's a website where you can invite people to drop like a thank you message, video, or graphic on a board, and then you give that to a person you want to recognize, and they see all the nice messages. It's like basically signing a giant birthday card for someone all electronically, and people can put fun gifts on there and videos and stuff too. Kudo Board is what I think that's called. Is that helping?
Yeah, those are some good suggestions.
Awesome. What else? Well, if you are in the Triangle area and there's anything that I or Activate Good can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. I'm happy to support you. The community has been through a lot and we're all in this together. So let us support, and I can't wait to see human beings in person more often. And not have to have these conversations about how to structure amazing virtual volunteer opportunities. But I think actually volunteering is going to be around after we get out of this. So it's good to know and have that in your arsenal. Thank you, Lindsay and Maggie and everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing what you do. What a great organization.
Thank you.
I think having organizations like yours will make, and part of the reason why we started this summit as well is to have this network of connections. And so when we get volunteers that are begging us for work, but we don't have anything, because places like the Science Museum, for example, like one of my biggest challenges was been finding virtual opportunities, because the vast majority of our opportunities are so hands-on, and we've been asking around and racking our brains and trying to figure out how can we make some of these virtual, and it's been a real challenge. So having this network of connections where we can say, okay, you really want to do some volunteer work, that's great, I'm sorry I don't have anything, but hey, here's a list of some local organizations that could definitely use some help that have virtual or remote opportunities for you. So it'll be a good opportunity for us to be able to refer people to places when they're asking us and we just don't have it. So does anybody else have any last questions for Amber? Nothing? Well, I do want to say thank you massively to Amber. Thank you so much for your presentation. For those of you who are going to be, let's take a look at my agenda here. For those of you who, as we swap around for the next set of concurrent sessions, as a reminder, for those who are wishing to attend from virtual programming to youth action, you may remain here in this room. For those of you who are looking to attend, what keeps them coming back? We're going to swap over to the next room. I'm going to pop that link in the chat for you to make it easy. Amber, do you have anything else?
No, just thank you all for being here, for the great work that you do. And I hope that you found this helpful, and I look forward to staying connected.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Jessica and Amber, so much. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.